From analog.
Hi, Jim. You've a great signal up here. You're 5.9 plus.
Digital.
We are everywhere you want to be. This is the CQ Blind Hams Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the CQ Blind Hams Podcast. My name is Julian. My call is N1CA November 1, Charlie Alpha. And sitting here just off to my side is Joel W0CAS. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, good evening, Julian. And as I said, good evening. It's good morning for our guests because we have today with us Joe VK7JS. And Joe happens to be a little bit further south than we are. Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Joseph, and I am totally blind, and I have been a software engineer working for Vispero / Freedom Scientific / Henter Joyce for about 25 years. I live on a farm in North Tasmania with my family. We have 9 children, many of which have already left home, and we have about 200 acres, and we are surrounded by forest. And we have sheep and cows and poultry and goats. You can probably hear the chickens in the background at the moment crowing away. They don't just crow in the morning, they crow all day and all night.
Yeah, I remember talking to you on the network one morning here for me, as I guess it's in the evening for you, and you had the chickens clucking around, and I think you were at a campfire. And I thought, man, that's pretty cool to be out and about on your own property. I used to own a farm. I raised beef cattle also at one time. But 200 acres, that's quite a task to take home right there.
Well, it's very different for me. I mean, I haven't been on the farm all my life. We only moved here 3 or so years ago. Before that, I was in a city block. I'm a programmer. I'm not a farmer. So it's been a very big learning curve and quite a challenge. Well,
good. I would like to talk a little bit about the Accessible GD77 firmware and voice packs that you have been working on. You want to tell us a little bit about maybe do the history since when Roger pulled it off of GitHub, and I think that's when you picked it up, wasn't it?
Well, as soon as I found out about this project, I thought this is just fantastic. I was amazed that someone would actually take the time to do accessibility from scratch in the firmware. So I contacted Roger really early on, and I didn't get much of a response from him, but I saw that the source was available on GitHub, so I downloaded it and I started playing with it, started adding features and fixing bugs in the code. And initially he answered a few of my questions just to get the environment up and running. But I was somewhat disappointed in that it was like they wanted to be completely in charge of the project and not sort of let anyone else sort of contribute. So it was a bit disappointing at first. But when he pulled the project off of GitHub, he actually started writing to me every day, and I thought, wow, this is really good. Maybe we can actually have some cooperation here, because I really didn't want to take over the project. What I wanted to do was contribute to the project. I wanted him to maintain the project, and I guess I just wanted to contribute to the accessibility side of it and let them concentrate on, more interesting things that they would be more expert at, like, getting the DMR working better or texting or whatever the feature was that they were working on. So I was kind of disappointed that really from right at the beginning, it was more like, well, you do your thing and we'll do our thing, and none shall, never the twain shall meet. So when he did pull it off of GitHub, he released it for about 10 minutes, the source for 10 minutes. So I managed to grab it at the time. And Jan OK1TE from the Czech Republic also was very interested in improving the accessibility. So he worked with me and helped merge. Each time Roger brought out a new firmware version, he helped merge all the changes in. And it took us, each time we had to merge, it was a huge effort. I suspect there'll be another one coming up soon, but every 2 months or so we have to merge all the changes in. But it's a really, really complex project, and it's a really rewarding project. I think it's almost as rewarding as doing a screen reader, in the sense that finally blind people can actually have a completely accessible device that is purpose-built, modified, and not just for blind people. We have people like Neil, K8IT, and others with dexterity issues, and we can actually take the time to make these devices work for them. So, we've got one-handed mode, so someone who can't use the use of both hands or really struggles can use it. And whether one person has an issue that they really need help with, we can actually make everyone really feel that, we actually care about them being able to use the device. It's not this massive commercial thing. I mean, one person writes to me, and I think, if their changes make sense with the rest of the code, well, I'll add it. Add the feature, add the add the enhancement, fix the problem.
You did something, I haven't updated since the April pull down, I guess, end of April. And I would just sort of, everything was working fine. I had no need to, and I'm not a early adopter. So when you did something recently, it rang a few bells with me, and that's the auto zones. And I've been wanting to put GMRS in my radio code plug, but sitting down and typing all that stuff in and adding all those frequencies. But when you come up with those auto zones, I said, I've got to update. Now, I was a little intimidated about the process of adding Radioddity's file, and maybe you can you can go over that, just a simple how it's done now as opposed to how it used to be done, if you could do that.
Well, I think the first thing to understand is it's very hard to brick your radio, and I don't think you should be afraid of experimentation, because when I'm developing stuff, I might upload dozens of times, in a day. So the process is a little bit more complicated than it used to be, but not that much more. Basically, what you do is you open the CPS software. You initially point the software at the official Radioddity firmware 4.3.6 or whatever the file is. Once you've done that once, you don't have to keep doing it. You only do it once. After that, you simply click on the Update File button, and even that button remembers where you got the last firmware update from. So there's two different files. There's a firmware 4.3.6.sgl file, which is the official Radioddity firmware. And the reason why he has to do that is because that has the official codec for decoding DMR signals, and that is proprietary. That is not open source. We can't distribute it. We can't decompile it. It's proprietary. So what Roger did was, when you update the firmware, it actually combines on the fly the firmware that we have written with the codec, and it copies it to the radio. So it just means that he doesn't have to distribute the codec separately. So basically, you point the CPS software at the official firmware once, and you click up. You don't even click update. You just point it to it, and then you click on update file. You choose the bin file, which is the binary that we distribute, and we now distribute the binaries for the GD77, GD77S, Baofeng DM1801, 1801A, and RD5R. So there's now 5 different radios that support this firmware. And then after you have updated the bin file, which is the firmware, sometimes, but not always, you will also have to update the voice pack. And I will tell you in the README file whether you have to update the voice pack. It's not very often that you do. It's only when we actually have to add a new voice prompt that you have to update that. So 99% of the time, you're only updating one file. And remember, the way you do that is you turn your radio off, you hold down SK1 and SK2 and turn it on with the USB plugged in. Then you do your upload with the update file. Then you turn your radio off and then back on again. And if you want to update code, plug, or voice prompt, you do it after you've rebooted, and you don't hold down SK1 and SK2 again. That's only for the firmware loader stage. So most of the time when you update the firmware, it's just one simple step. As I said, the only time you need to update voice prompts again is if I tell you to, because I've had to add a new voice prompt, which isn't that often these days. And it'll probably become fewer and fewer times, because really we're running out of memory. There's less than 20K left. There's not a lot we can do left now. We can obviously fix bugs, and I think there's probably a few more small features that we can do, but tidy up. I was talking to Jan OK1TE in the Czech Republic, and there's a few things we want to tidy up, like the editing. So currently in the channel name, you can edit the channel name, but if you go to edit the DMR ID, for instance, the edit experience isn't consistent there. You can't arrow left and right. You can't backspace. So there's a few places where the edit experience is not consistent, and we're hoping Daniel will fix it, and we'll just get it for free when we merge. But if he doesn't, Jan or myself will eventually get to fixing that. And there's a few other things like that, but majority of things are very accessible and work. But just coming back to the auto zones for a minute, main reason I did that was because I wanted the UHF CB band in Australia on there. And I didn't want to program 80 channels. And you think, well, wasn't it longer to program the auto zone than to program in the 80 channels? Well, maybe. But then if I did this, then everyone else wouldn't have to do it. But I didn't have to program any channels. What I did was it's all done with formulas and heuristics. So, it's a channelized thing every 12.5 kilohertz or whatever. And so what I did was I have a lookup table, and it's very easy for me to add new auto zones. I just need the band plan. I can write a simple function that applies restrictions to that band plan, but it might take 10 minutes to add a new auto zone for each auto zone that we add now. And I've made it so in the latest firmware you can actually enable multiple auto zones. Originally you could only do one at a time, but now you can do all of them if you want. Not that they're relevant in most countries, but in Australia, for instance, you can enable the marine and the UHF-CB, and then when you cycle through the zones, you can just choose that zone, and everything's there. The band plan's adhered to. If you do want to add CTCSS codes or whatever, you can do it temporarily. But if you really want to save it to a channel, then what you'd have to do is create a real channel out of it, because the AutoZone is not a real channel. It takes up no memory. What you'd have to do is copy it to VFO, then copy it to new channel and edit it. I was thinking of adding another feature where you can convert an AutoZone to a real zone, or convert an AutoZone channel to a real channel, and I may do that eventually, but we'll have to see. I have to share this task obviously with my main work, which is writing JAWS, and that takes up most of my time. So the only time I get to do this is sort of really late at night, and when everyone's in bed and I'm not doing anything else. So
well, you're doing a wonderful job. I tell you, when I updated it, I was shocked how good the auto zones worked. And the first time I did it, it just, you could only pick one. And I thought, well, that's not too bad. You just, you just go into options and turn it on, and turn, the other one goes off. But when you enabled all of them or one of them or as many as you want, I thought that I updated immediately as soon as I read that. One question I had, and Bob KLR asked me this: what is the is it a 1801A? What is that for? Is that for the Australian radios only, or the?
No, in fact, Daniel and Roger mentioned the 1801A, and I believe one of them or one of their friends bought a DM1801, and it came as an 1801A. The model was 1801A, and it has two less keys. It's more like, the keypad is more like the GD77 than the 1801. The 1801's got two extra keys, and those two extra keys are not present on the 1801A. So I think the key layout is identical to the GD77. It's just that it didn't used to work because it thought it was an 1801, and it expected the extra two keys to exist when they didn't.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. It's kind of like the
but I don't know how
THD74A is American and the E version is European, so I didn't know what that was for, but that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know how available these DM1801As are, because I haven't actually found them anywhere, and most of the people on the list haven't either. But apparently when you order an 1801 from certain suppliers, they'll send you an 1801A, so just be aware of that.
Oh, Julian, you had a couple of questions, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to go back to real quick, when you talked about putting that little file in there in the beginning, when you talked about pointing your CPS to it, do you also have to send that to the radio as well the first time, at least once, to make this happen, or is it just a matter of bringing the CPS to it, it sees it, and now it does what it needs to do?
Yes, you just point the CPS to that SGL file, and it handles the transfer at the time when you update the firmware, the other file. So you don't actually. It's so long since I did it. I'm pretty sure that's all it does. You just point it to it, just so it knows where to get it from.
Okay, but you don't actually have to write it to the radio.
It's a little button, isn't it? Is it a button in the CPS that you click on and?
Yes, and it basically opens a file dialog. You go down and you tell it where which folder the file's in, and then it remembers it from that point onwards. As long as you don't remove the SGL file, then you never have to do it again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm still running the older stuff right before, it all got pulled off. So I'm one of these, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, the more stuff you're adding, especially the one that's tempting me is the feature that you added now, where every zone remembers what channel you were last on. That one really tempts me a lot. The auto zones seem kind of interesting, but I'm not sure how much use I'll exactly get out of those. So one other thing I'd heard too is that apparently with the pound key, how you can use that to enter things like if you're an FM, string of DTMF tones that you're going to dial, and on DMR, the talk group that you want to be on. I've heard now that there is some sort of a timer on that thing that reverts if you don't do it within a certain amount of time. Any thoughts on perhaps giving people the ability to toggle that off? Maybe some people might like to do it the old way versus the new way.
Timer. Oh, I think what you're talking about is are you talking about the Dtmf Latch?
Right.
That's a different feature again. So the official firmware on the hash key will bring you into a Dtmf dialer, but before they came up with their Dtmf dialer, we already had a Dtmf Latch feature, which is like on most radios, where you press the PTT button, you start dialing, then you let go of the PTT button, and you can keep dialing, just like the Kenwood THD74.
Right.
So that was our feature, and that one you can adjust the Dtmf Latch time to as long as you like, well, up to about 3 or 4 seconds or something. But we do now offer the Dtmf dialer of the official firmware, but you can't get to it straight from the main radio screen. You have to go to the contacts and go into it from there. But the timer itself, that's only when you're actually dialing, when you're pressing PTT and dialing, and that is adjustable.
Oh, okay. And then as far as DMR talk group entry, that hasn't changed. It's not going to be where if you don't enter it fast enough, it's going to revert back to the normal.
No. As far as I know, he hasn't changed that. Okay. The other thing that we have on HashKey, which is I think a lot more useful in FM mode, at least, is the ability to you can set your UHF and VHF repeater offsets. You know, the UHF defaults to 5 megahertz, right. The VHF defaults to 600 kilohertz, and then you can just, in VFO mode or channel mode, you can just hit the hash key to go plus, minus, or none, and you don't have to, set the receive and transmit frequency separately. And for most people, that is much easier to set up a repeater. I much more prefer that. There is talk of changing the key for that, so that we don't. So you can do it in DMR mode as well. The problem is, because in DMR mode right now, the hash key goes into the talk group entry. So there was some talk of putting it on a long hold of hash, but we haven't done it yet, and I'll probably hold off until there's consensus. Okay,
yeah, because as far as I'm concerned, I'd much rather have the one push of the hash key or pound key, depending on where you are. I like the quick press of that, bringing up the option, press it once, you can do a talk group, press it again, it's a private, and so on and so forth. I think that's very handy in DMR.
Oh yeah, well that's currently in DMR. It's, the repeater offset's only for FM mode at the moment, but obviously you want to try and make things consistent for both modes wherever possible on the keypad.
I've got a question.
There is another.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go on. Oh, I was just going to say there's another feature that people may not know about, and that's the ability to save quick keys. So if you often visit a menu, say you want to jump to the voice prompts menu, you can actually go to the menu, go to the voice prompts option, and then press and hold SK2 and hold, and then press a number key, and that will say save quick key 1 to voice prompts, and you can press the green key yes or the red key no. And then after that, whenever you want to go to that menu from the channel screen, you can just hit SK2 and that number, and it will jump straight there, and then you just hit the green key to confirm. So I don't know whether people know that that feature exists, but it's quite handy. In the old days when Roger first brought the firmware out, there were some actually hard-coded quick keys, like I think it was SK2 plus number 2 for battery or something like that. I can't even remember what they were. But now it's all programmable. You can have up to 10 quick keys.
Wow, it's like that's what the Kenwood calls the PF keys, the programmable function keys. So you can make the whole keypad a programmable function keypad. That's awesome. My question is about the GD77S and the auto zones. It's not a functionality now. And then Paul and I, KC5ALH, and I were talking yesterday about how that could be possibly done. Do you have access to the top button of the 77S? Could you make another menu item on there, or is that kind of locked down on the 77S?
Oh no, you could, but the problem with the 77S is that you're limited to 16 channels.
Yeah,
unless your AutoZone only had 16 channels.
Yeah, I was thinking of a way to fix that. So if you put it on channel 16 and have it in AutoZone, then you could use the SK1, SK2 to go up and down more channels. Does that make sense? So if you put the top button on AutoZone and you got 15 channels, and then the 16th channel activates the SK1, SK2, and you could go through more channels that way.
I don't know. It's quite complicated. I haven't really done a lot with the 77S because I guess because my time is so limited and I'm trying to do as many things as I can for the most people, it's, I haven't really done a lot with the S. Someone else asked me, Neil asked me recently whether we can do text input with the 77S by getting it into a certain mode and then, up and down arrows to choose letters and stuff. Yeah, it's possible, but it's a lot of work for, I don't know how many people are even using the S these days. I know there's at least 2.
Oh, there's more than that. I've got 2 of them. Let's see, Russ, KLR, or Russ, KN4MLR uses one every day. There's a lot of them out there. Some people, I have 2. I also have 2 GD77s. But right now, my S's, I keep them in an ammo can for backup after an EMP. But a lot of people use them every day. Chris Miller's got one, and he uses his. Enoch uses his. There's more than you realize.
And I would think for sure that there would be people like Neil with physical or motor disabilities that would probably be drawn to that radio. And especially, I think that's one of the things Neil really seems to like about it, is that there's this potential to make a very simple interface that would allow people like that with limited motor abilities to suddenly have more access to functions.
Okay, so given that information, maybe if you're listening to this, send me an email with your top request for the GD77S, and I'll just see what's there. I do feel that, as I said, my time is really, really limited, so I really want to make sure that what I'm doing is going to be useful to people. I remember one time someone asked me for the SK2 latch, and I spent the weekend doing it, and they never even responded to say whether they used it, whether they liked it, whether it worked for them or not. So, I use it every day. But you know what I mean? So if you do ask for something, please make sure when I do it that you actually test it and let me know whether it's suitable.
What's the email address I should send that to?
So you can write to me at joestephen, JOESTEPHEN, at skymesh, SKYMESH.com.au.
And I would probably suggest that maybe in the subject line you put GD77S request. That would probably make it easier to sift through.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll put that. We'll put your email in the show notes of the podcast and on YouTube. And I'd ask people, if you're on the YouTube, if you watch the YouTube video, maybe post a comment. I answer all comments, and then if somebody sends a comment on a particular video, like Patrick had a video that and somebody had commented on it, and I forwarded it to Patrick, and there's different people that comments on different videos, and I'll forward it to the person that actually was in the video. So if anybody leaves a comment in the YouTube videos, I'll forward them on to Joe, and that way he'll also have feedback that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back briefly to the issue of the 2 forks of GD77. So there's the Open GD77 Rogers project with Daniel, and I think they're the main 2 developers. And then there is Accessible GD77. My wish would, of course, be to merge the 2. And if you really, really feel strongly about that and think that the features and things that I've added are useful and would be useful to other people, please make sure that you get on that forum, the Open GD77 forum, and request it, because my requests have fallen on deaf ears. But it is a huge task to merge every time they come out with a new feature set, and like they've put a lot of effort into the accessibility, and it's just a shame that we had to fork it. But we've got probably 60 or 70 extra features and bug fixes over and above what the official firmware has, and maybe one day ours will continue and theirs will stop. Who knows? But it would be much better if we could merge the 2 and keep them in sync. And the other point I was going to make is, Accessible GD77 is not just used by blind people. I actually put a link out on VK Classifieds over the weekend, and people are downloading it from there too. And it's not just for blind people; it's for everyone. And if you've got another disability like dexterity issues, it's certainly suitable. So, yeah, use it.
I've always argued the point that the big three radio manufacturers are really missing the boat on mobile radios by not putting voice prompts on mobile radios. I mean, it's actually a driving hazard to look down at the menus and make adjustments, where if you could hit a keypad on a microphone like the Kenwood TMV71A, if you just hit a button on that and read the frequency and be able to change channels and know what channel you're on with audio prompts, voice prompts, you know, they're just missing the boat. You know, I wish they'd get on board with the accessibility. You know, the people like Radioddity and some of the other manufacturers, TYT, so, you know, they all could do this. I mean, you guys are doing
Oh, yeah.
this.
Well, we wrote to all of the manufacturers. We wrote to Kenwood, we wrote to TYT, we wrote to Baofeng, and probably every manufacturer I've written to. And I've even offered, you know, to help them. But you get very little feedback. And another project that's in the works is still not, you know, ready for prime time, is with voice prompts at least, is OpenRTX, which is another open source firmware, and that works on like the MDE380 and other radios as well. And that's eventually going to have voice prompts too, hopefully, you know, if I get time to actually contribute to it. But as I said, there's a lot I'd like to do. I mean, I also tried making the UBitX accessible, but that one, I ended up giving up on that simply because the processor on it wasn't fast, it wasn't powerful enough, and it was just too difficult. You know, but there's a lot of projects I'd like to do. It's just a matter of time. But, you know, the one that Rob Santello was working on all those years, it would be really good to get an open source version of a programmable keypad going. We just need someone to do the hardware, and, you know, I'm certainly happy to help with the firmware. But again, you need someone to drive it. You need someone who's got the hardware experience, and of course, sufficient time to manage it. And, you know, I would say to those who do write to me, I'm sorry if my responses are usually fairly curt. As you can imagine, I spend many hours programming, and I don't spend many hours. I mean, therefore, I don't have many hours for anything else. So I do my best to try and communicate, but I try and leave the communication to others and the writing to others, and I just concentrate on the programming.
Well, also, you and Buddy started the mail list to get information out, and that's been very helpful. I noticed you're posting also on blindhamsgroup.io also when you come out with a new release or a beta release, and that's awesome too. Do you think we still need to let everybody know about the Portcasts mail list, or do you think everybody's getting the information over Blind Hams?
Oh, I forgot about the other mailing list. I would think that everyone would be getting it off the main Blind Hams one now. I think I'm still subscribed to that other one too, and I don't get any mail from it, so I'm not sure how many people are still using it. The main reason we still have the GD77 mailing list is because you can send binaries to it. And so when I do send patches out, I can send them on there. Otherwise, I just use the Blind Hams list. And just a note on that, actually, I know that there are some days I send a lot of posts out, and some days I don't send, you know, and then it goes for a few days without sending any out. Don't feel obliged to download every beta. If you're a beta tester and you love that sort of cutting edge stuff, great. I really appreciate your feedback. If not, you can wait to the release versions, and that's certainly fine too.
Yeah, I've heard comments that, when it settles down, I'll download it. And I said, well, I mean, Joe's always going to find bugs, or people are reporting bugs. I mean, if you've not done it in 3 or 4 months, give it a shot. You might find something you didn't know it had. And that's what I did. I found, there's 2 or 3 things that I didn't realize were in there. I did know about the auto zones, and that was really attractive. I thought, man, that's breaking edge right there. I really like that, and I appreciate your hard work putting that together. There's one of those that we don't know what means. There's one that's got a number in it at the end of it. I'm assuming it's an Australian. It's a
PMR 446.
Yeah, what is that?
PMR. I think that's the UK. Someone on the list sent me the band plan for it. I'm pretty sure that's the UK's like CB band, personal mobile radio or something. I was going to say something about. I mean, basically pretty well every feature that people have requested on the list, I've implemented now. So, I take people seriously as long as it's doable and it's, makes sense, obviously.
But you've done a great job. That's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here, to let you know everybody that I've talked to that has a 77 appreciates your hard work, and especially even with your day job. It's amazing that you have the time to do it and have a family life, and we just want to let you know that we appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that as well, is that, I mean, look, I very much appreciate the efforts that came before this. The stuff that Kenwood does is great. The stuff that even Roger and Ian started doing, I mean, definitely breakthrough. But what I think is really special, Joseph, about what you're doing is that you're part of this community. You use the radio the way we use the radio. You have a passion for it. And while I think, trying to think of how to say this delicately, potentially offending somebody, but the bottom line is that, I think sighted people can have the best of intentions, but at the end of the day, if they're not using the radio the way we use the radio, things get missed. And I think this is why what you're doing is especially wonderful and absolutely should be commended and should be supported. And again, just, if you have any thoughts or ideas or suggestions, I would say even if you don't think it's all that important, just send it to him anyway, because you just never know. Maybe a few other people have asked it as well. And the more he hears from you that, enough people want a certain something, then it makes it worth his limited time to go in there and do it. So again, just hats off to you. I think, what you're doing for amateur radio by continuing to enhance what is by far the most accessible handheld radio on the market today, is nothing short of amazing. And, speaking as a blind user, I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I think there's 2 points there too. I work with the same passion on JAWS. A lot of people think that it's all done by sighted people. No, the main two programmers on JAWS are myself and Glenn Gordon, and we're totally blind. And they're our babies. JAWS is our baby. It's like one of my children, my 10 children. And I put my whole heart and soul into whatever I do, particularly with software, because I'm a user as well. And I want to encourage people with that, it is important to me that bugs get fixed. It is important to me that you get heard. It is important to me that your feature requests get implemented. With JAWS, for instance, I just want to give a bit of context there. I have a list of over 350 tasks every day, and I might not get to the second task. So, in every 2 years, those bug counts get purged because there's just so much to do. Not just all bugs, feature requests, etc. But the point is that I'm as passionate about getting what users want into the product as you are, and I really, really do my best. And I actually get quite upset when I can't implement what I know people need, and I have to get every company has their bureaucracy and their priorities and things like that. But I definitely am an end user like you, and want to see whatever I work on reflect what our users need.
You do a great job as far as the GD77 and all of its brothers. I've had an idea, and I want to run it across you, Joe, and see what you think about it. I don't know if I've told Julian or not. HF radios, Kenwood is the king right now in HF as far as accessibility. There's a radio company in America called BuyTwoWayRadios.com, and they have an affiliation with Ocean, the Ocean Radio Company, and I found out that they contacted Ocean and had a radio built specifically to their specifications, HT, a GMRS radio. And they rebranded it, or it's still an Ocean radio, but, they're the exclusive dealer in it. So my idea, I heard bells ringing when I heard this, and I said, well, what if the blind community went to Buy Two-Way Radios and says, how many radios would we have to make a commitment to buy? I'm talking about either HTs or HF radios. I'd like to have a HF radio with UHF and VHF also. How many radios would we have to make a commitment, put a deposit down, and make the software open source, or even let you guys on the team write the software from scratch? I don't know if that's possible. Or at least get Ocean to write the software and then make it open source. You think there's something like that possible, Joe? Could it be done?
I think the open source idea is the way to go. You raised a very interesting point before about sighted people not actually using radios the way we do. And again, I don't want to detract from the incredible effort that Roger and Daniel put in to start with it, and even Kenwood with their, the D74. But ultimately, we need to be able to tinker with that firmware to make it really sing. And I think the idea of proprietary hardware and firmware just really is not the way to go anymore. What might be a good way is to get an SDR based hardware solution and then an open source firmware solution, and that would certainly be a good way to actually proceed.
So yeah, and if we could do that, I don't know how many radios they would require, maybe 50 or 100, and we might not be able to purchase that many. The community, we have 300 or 400 blind people that has been through the bridge and on the mailing list, and we have 200 and something subscribers to YouTube, and we have 120 subscribers to the podcast. That's not a lot as podcasts and YouTube go, but that's a lot of blind hams if you think about it. So if we could make a commitment to 100 radios.
I don't think that would be enough for the hardware side of it. I think what you'd have to do is convince the sighted community that an open source platform on a hardware platform is the way to go, because that way, if a manufacturer came out with a hardware platform on which people could, add custom firmware, which was open source, whether you're sighted or blind or anything else, then you've got a massive market. I don't think it would work with our small market, but it certainly would if you could convince them, hey, you just do the SDR side of it and leave it to the community to tinker, because that's what ham radio is about. Then, yeah, I think you've got that would be really, really good, and I think manufacturers should take notice.
Yeah, we could have a couple of key presses on a microphone to turn the voices off, and then if for sighted people, the software would still be great, open source software. Anybody could contribute to it. Kind of like what Roger's doing. He's sighted. He designed the Open GD77 for sighted people, and I think Ian contacted him at one time asking if voice prompts could be added, and then it went from there. That's the way Ian explained it to me.
Of course, the difference would be that if you had an SDR thing on a standard platform like a Linux or something, then you could actually have a proper synthesizer, not recorded voice prompts, and that would be a better way to go again. I mean, voice prompts are great, but for instance, I've really wanted to make it so you can change the rate on the fly, and I've been looking at how to do that. And if I really had the time, I think I could do it. You just do a transformation in the wave buffer before you send it to be played. But, ideally it would be better to actually have a software synthesizer, to run on the radio platform. And then, you wouldn't be limited to voice prompts. You could make it say anything, anywhere, anyhow, with the right adjustable speed and everything else.
Yeah, that's what you probably wanted to do with the UBitX or the micro BitX. You think with the Zygo G90 that would be possible to do something with that?
I haven't looked into the hardware platform that it's built on, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a SDR, I believe. Angelo's got one. I believe it is an SDR, software-defined radio. But anyway, that's the future, I think. And if we can get a few commitments and maybe talk with Ocean or someone that can produce either a mobile dual band or an HT that, they're big into HTs and mobiles. But I would like something like the ICOM IC705. It's the shack in the box, the UHF, VHF, and HF. That would be a perfect 20-watt radio. And if you want to make a base station, you could get a 100-watt amplifier to go with it. I think that'd be a great idea if we could get in on the manufacturing of it so we could get it designed, to the specs that we would want. Like you said, the SDR.
I'm just wondering if there's any other programmers in our blind community that are also hams. I mean, it is a steep learning curve to do firmware, but it's just code like anything else. And once you've learned it, it'd be great if there's others who'd like to contribute. Our source code is on GitHub, and it's under Jan. HegrJan. That's so Jan is the guy in Czech Republic. He's the one that set up the GitHub repository, and I just commit all my changes there. He obviously contributes when he can as well, but I'm sort of doing the majority of it at the moment. But other people can contribute and or at least look at the source and learn how it's done, and the more people we can get involved, maybe the faster we might get something done.
And lighten your load. That's the great part about it. I do know of a couple more programmers that are in the blind community, so we'll put that out there as another request. What language is it written in, Joe?
The firmware is written in C.
C. Okay. So any C programmers? Come on board. We need your help. Joe is openly asking for help. So we're throwing it out there.
Well, it's not just for this project. I mean, there's OpenRTX, which is the other one. If we want to get the voice prompts on the MD380, I know people like the MD380. They say it's a superior radio. Well, if you want to get the voice prompts in there faster, there's that project to contribute to. And I actually believe I saw somewhere, you mentioned the Zygo G90. I am sure I saw somewhere that someone was doing open source something. I don't know whether it was for that radio or a controller for that radio. I don't remember, but I just remember seeing something. But, there are other possibilities.
They are. That Zygo, I think, has a sound card in it, like the like the 590SG. So it's actually, you could plug it into a computer and use some kind of like Ham Radio Deluxe or my friend Russ, KN4MLR, he has a TS440, and he wrote a program called Blind Cat. And it basically changes the frequencies on the 440. And that's about all it does, because that's all the data set that the 440 will let you do, is do a few little things. So he did a little program called BlindCap for that. So maybe with a data set for a Xiegu, someone can maybe do some kind of screen reader capable CAT control computer, computer assisted control software for the Xiegu, or maybe some of these other radios. I know Rob has quit production of the ham pod, and that's sad. I know he sort of got to the EOL, or end of life of the ham pod. And I believe you mentioned him a while ago. He did such a great job for doing other radios other than Kenwood. He also did Kenwood radios, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Again, we just need someone who's good at hardware to do the basic keypad, and the firmware is do it with a Raspberry Pi probably and a keypad.
Excellent. Well, Julian, you have any other questions for Joe while we have him? It's the time crunch messed my brain up for a few minutes till Angelo kind of helped me figure it out. So, go ahead, Julian. You got any questions for Joseph?
No, not really. I mean, I think, I like the idea that eventually, you're looking into other radios, because, the GD77 family radios is great, but it's very limited, especially, like you pointed out, you're running out of usable memory. One other thing, it'd be nice to have more memory force for loading DMR databases. They're getting larger. In fact, I think I just saw that Radioddity came out or announced a new DMR radio that they're putting out that's going to be able to hold over 200,000, data stuff for DMR. So I think that, it's definitely good to be looking toward the future to see how we can extend this level of accessibility, but also functionality. Because that's one thing that the sighted people that I've talked to that run Open GD77 firmware is they like it because it makes it more user friendly to hams, where all the stuff that's on the market now for the most part is set up based on the way commercial radios are programmed. And it's, that doesn't work for the way we hams use radios. We like to tinker with stuff. We like to have more access to things. We like to customize things a lot more and not necessarily have to deal with a radio that's been, sort of proofed so that it can only be used in very limited ways. So I'm glad to hear that you're looking into stuff like that for the future, because I think it would definitely be good.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say a big thank you to Roger and also to Ian for, I came on board, certainly later than Ian did in terms of getting Roger to get the accessibility done. So I've only been able to, build on what they've done, and so I appreciate the work that they've done.
I think Daniel that does a lot of contributing.
Daniel. Yeah.
Yep. We also like to thank Ian for including your firmware in his packages. I downloaded his package when I did this, read his tutorial, listened to his MP3s, then I went and downloaded your firmware and used it. So I'd like to thank him for.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why he needs to include both anymore, because ours already includes all of Roger's functionality, every single bit of it. And so ours is a superset of Roger's. So, I mean, not that I don't want him to include Roger's, it's more the fact that it just causes confusion. So there's 2 points I should make about that, which are important. Firstly, ours is a superset of Roger's. We've got, as I said, 60 plus features or fixes above Roger's firmware. And yes, we keep up. Every time Roger brings a new version out, we merge it in. And secondly, the voice prompts, you can use my voice prompts with Roger's firmware because it's a superset, but you can't use Roger's with ours because there'll be a few missing prompts. So ours is a superset, both of voice prompts and of firmware.
And you
so
also
there's no point
include
necessarily.
You include all the English.
Go on.
Yeah, you include all the English, US, and Australian voices at the different speeds.
Yes.
And Ian only includes the male and female.
Right. And for those of you who might be interested in other aspects of reading about what I'm interested in, I've actually included in the latest archive, I wonder if anyone's noticed, there's another folder in there called Joseph's Writings. Take a look in there and have a look, because I'm not just a programmer, but that is a huge part of my life. But I also do a lot of other writing. So I've written 6 books with my wife, and as I said, we have 9 living children, and we live on a farm and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of other aspects of me than a programmer, and you can read about some of those things and my thoughts and that in that folder.
Oh, thank you so much. I was so in search of the firmware, I didn't go through the extra folder and look at it, but I'll definitely be doing that. All right, Joseph, I appreciate it, and we'd like to say thank you again for coming on the show and letting everybody in the audience know what's going on with the Accessible GD77 firmware and the whole project, Open GD77. And so I just want to say thank you again. In 73, we'll get you back on if there's any major updates that we need to let everybody know about.
Okay, thank you. 73.
73, keep up the good work.
And that's a cut, Angelo. Wow. Man, that's a powerful podcast, Joe, I swear. I was looking forward to this ever since you agreed to it. And when I told
thanks for having me on. That's good.
It's an honor to be with somebody that is so talented, that can be able to take thoughts of other people and be able to make software work. And it works great. It really does. I mean, I did 4 radios this weekend. I did 2 77s and then the 77S. And, I'm serious about if there's any way to make the auto zones work on the 77S. Flip, over in Cleveland, Tennessee, he only has a 77S, and he was asking me, well, does the auto zones work for it? And I said, I don't know, but I want to get my 77S out and update it, and I'll let you know.
Would that be your top request? The auto zones for the 77S? What would be the top request?
That would be my top request, because, I'm going to go and get the GMRS license for my family. And I've got 2 S's, and we're moving to a farm. So I want to be able to give the kids a 77S and put it on GMRS channels. That's my personal use. And a lot of people, Angelo was using, he has listened to boat traffic. You heard an emergency, didn't you, Angelo, on the ocean yesterday, with the marine channels. I mean, that's handy. That's handy.
I'll ponder how I could do it with the S. I mean, I don't particularly like where you have to go to channel 16 and then use up and down to get to the rest, unless that's already what they're already doing. I think that would be a bit confusing. But I guess,
So what if you didn't use the channels on AutoZone? Just didn't use the channel knob at all. Just once you put it in AutoZone mode, then you can use up and down. Or the
that's possible. Yep, that might work, because up and down normally goes through the options for each zone. Each option changes the values for that top menu, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's possible. But then you go to an so you hit auto zones, then you have to choose which one. And then once you go in there, then you have to choose the channel. So it's just a tad tricky.
Yeah, I can see where you. Yeah, that's.
Or what if you use the channel knob to switch between the auto zones?
Yeah, once you put an auto zone. There you go.
Great one. So you hit the function key to choose auto zone, use the channel knob to change the auto zone, and then use up and down arrow to choose the channel.
There you go, Julian. That's it.
Yeah, that would work.
You can do it. Yeah, because you're not going to have 16 different auto zones. What do you have, 6 or 7 auto zones right now?
About 7, I think. Yeah. Yeah, let me ponder that, because that would be good. Other than that, what would be the next highest request for this 77S, you think?
Can you think of any, Julian?
I can't think of any. And again, I'm not. I own one, but I don't use it anymore since I got the 77.
Yeah, I know.
Neil would probably
K8IT
be a
wants the
much better one.
text input.
Yeah, he wants to create another
reckons,
AutoZone to be able to do text. And he sent me the email he sent you guys, and I didn't understand what he was saying. I mean, I like Neil.
So I think what you do is you press the. Yeah, I think what you do is you're in. But how do you even change from FM to DMR mode on the 77S?
You have to have your code plug. You have to have it in your code plug. I've got one right here.
So I'm not really sure how useful that would be.
Scan mode, scan, filter mode, filter, C, Dtmf contact list, zone mode,
zone mode,
power mode, power, 5, 0, economy level mode.
Economy level 2 is another great thing. I don't know if that was Roger's or yours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that really does make a huge difference. I can leave my radio on economy level and I got 90% battery power by the end of the day still.
Yeah, it's a good radio. I mean, Rust uses his all. He keeps one up, his 77S in his basement near his HF radio, and he's got his 77 upstairs, and he uses them every day. And Flip, that's the only one he has. There's several people that just has the 77S. I mean, I bet you there's at least 50 of them out there that people have.
Okay, well, I will ponder it. It's just, yeah, it is. It's quite a lot of work to add features to the 77S part of it. But I mean, you know, if there's enough people who need it, then I'll see if I can do it. Yeah, I don't know how useful that text order thing for a texting thing is for.
I think he wants to do some kind of DTMF. Is it DTMF he's wanting to be able to?
No, he said to convert the numbers and letters to a TG.
Talk group.
That's a talker.
Yeah, but I thought that would be in your code plug anyway. I guess if you wanted to do one that's not in your code plug.
Yeah, maybe what he's trying to do, enter one on the fly, like when you hit the hash key and then put a. I don't know.
Yeah, but how would you do backspace? It would be really, really
cumbersome.
difficult.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think those AutoZones are the coolest thing you've ever done. That's I mean, on my 77, I just love them.
I intended at the beginning to make it so you could have multiple. It's just that I wanted to get it working with one first.
Yeah, I agree. And it did, and I thought, okay, I'll switch, but now that I don't have to switch, that's even better. And the SK2 and the up arrow, switching from zones, I love that feature too. I don't know if that was a Daniel or yours or.
Yeah, that was already in there. I like the SK2 latch. It's interesting because I never thought I'd use it, but I have it on all the time now. Then I, can control it with one hand, the radio.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, Joe, is it it's time for you to go to work, or?
I need to go and do some work. That's right.
Well, we appreciate it, and I know I'm not a JAWS user. I'm going to be, but I appreciate all your history with JAWS, and we've got a lot of JAWS users that really appreciate all your hard work on that also. Well, my
I better
friend,
get back to it. So thanks for your time.
If I ever get to Tasmania, I'll look you up.
Oh yeah, you'll be welcome.
Eat some of those fresh eggs. 7-3, my friend. Talk to you later.
Okay, 7-3.